Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to the third episode of Planet FPL Correspondent Week. And we're over in the west of London today. Delighted to be joined by our Brentford correspondent, Tom Med. How are you, Tom?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, it could be better, I guess, but not too bad.
Why could it be better?
Oh well, it's another year, another load of injuries that probably won't get talked about. But
We're gonna talk about some of them here. Just quickly, firstly, in terms of a,
mm,
a little bit of an intro, Thomas Frank was linked for a little bit with the Chelsea job,
yeah,
particularly. Was there
hmm
any concern?
not. I mean, for me, not really. I mean, he came out pretty quickly and was said obviously that he's happy where he is and things like that. By the sounds of it, he did actually go for interviews and stuff, but they sort of discounted him quite quickly. I
Okay, so you
mean,
think he had an interview?
it sounded like it. It sounded like because obviously you only hear the rumors and obviously you only hear what obviously the journalists put on Twitter and things like that. But it's one of those where, for me, he's always been one of those managers. Obviously, I love him. I think he's fantastic. But it's whether he would be able to do it if he stepped up. And for me, it reminds me a bit like Graham Potter, like when he went from Brighton to Chelsea. And obviously, the environment he went into was a bit of a nightmare for him. But it just didn't. For me, it's like I think Frank would have to go into a pretty stable place for it to run quite well because it's sort of
Are you suggesting Chelsea's not stable?
I mean, something like that, but yeah, I don't know. Obviously his first and ever owner manager job is with Brentford. Obviously, he was assistant manager with us before he got the full-time job, and so he only really knows that environment. And so I imagine it's sort of a big risk if any other club goes in for him. Obviously, for me, I think he's a fantastic manager, but whether he's able to do that at a different club in a different environment with different people around him, I think it'd be quite a big risk for any club to really take that on, as well as he's done with Brentford. So.
Yeah, I don't foresee him. I don't want to talk about your manager leaving particularly, mate, but I don't foresee him
No.
jumping into one of the top
No,
eight jobs.
no, exactly.
West Ham have just got a new manager, Brighton just got a new manager, Palace have recently got a new manager. It's just like if he was to jump within our country, what you actually jump into, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Brighton was my only real fear that he might go there, to be honest. And that was the only one I could see him like, because obviously they have a similar, they do things
Model.
similarly to us, but have done
Yeah.
it before we did it, if that makes sense. So that was the only one I sort of was like, oh, this could be interesting.
And ironically, we did see a couple of instances last year where we'd said, didn't we, careful what you wish for. There was some booing when you were losing to Chelsea,
Oh,
actually, at half time.
yeah.
Is everyone over that now? And does this idea that he might have had an interview elsewhere, does it change any of the fan sentiment overall
No,
to
I
him?
mean, no, definitely not. I mean, like the booing, I think was very small. It was like it was a tiny proportion of fans because all of the real fans realised the injury crisis we had last year, the lack of squad depth, and how can that even be slightly placed on Thomas Frank's doorstep is crazy, and so the people who actually know the team and don't just turn up to every other game and things like that, actually invest the time and know the team well, definitely wouldn't be booing him because it's just doesn't make any sense with what happened last year. So,
And when you say what happened last year, I presume you're referring to injuries from
oh
that
yeah,
perspective quite a lot. What's
I
what's
mean,
the,
yeah,
what's the expectations now? We sat here 3 years ago, and you'll definitely remember me saying to you, enjoy it, because it might just be 1 year. You never
yeah,
know. Now you almost feel like part of the furniture. There's an
yeah.
acceptance that last year was massively hampered by injuries. What does Brentford want to be now going forward?
I think it's trying to get back to what it was, in our second season, pushing the top half and trying to be the best of the rest, I guess, is the best way to set up. Obviously, we don't have, I mean, still from a financial point of view, we're well below even sort of the mid-table clubs. And so we have to always, overachieve against expectation. And so for me, if we're able to be up there and be best of the rest, fighting towards lower top half of the table, that's really where we should be aiming for. Um, because you just look at obviously some of the players that have already been bought by some of the clubs around us, and the amount of money that's being spent around us, it's difficult to compete at that level. So we just need to sort of
I feel like
being
you've
like that.
adjusted quite well though. Like we know that you can go and spend 30, 40 million pound
Yeah,
on a player. I feel like your adjustment's been fairly smooth. You've not gone over the top with your spending. There was it sort of 35, 40 million in for Bakayoko?
Yeah.
bid last summer, similar
Yeah.
money offered for Brennan Johnson as well. So we know if you want to buy a key attacking player to improve, you may well have some money coming into the club, as we'll discuss shortly as well. Was your reaction to the fixtures? Does it look good or bad?
I mean, it's not the nicest of starts for us, really, is it? It's yeah, not looking. What is it? Liverpool, City. It's yeah, it's an exciting start, I guess. But I guess it's one of those where I think his first five are pretty miserable. Obviously, Palace first game of the season, but then straight into some tough fixtures. But then by about game week after the City game, it then looks slightly better. So hopefully we get the first fixture out of the way. And I guess gives a good opportunity to just get them done and see how we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, your first four away games are Liverpool, City, Tottenham, which are all inside the first five. And then there's a trip to Manchester United in game week 8 as well. What it does mean is a real slant towards your home fixtures. Your first
Mm.
seven at home: Palace, Southampton, West Ham, Wolves, Ipswich, Bournemouth, Leicester. Obviously, all look winnable, and you're capable of winning the majority of them. It does put a little bit of pressure on them, though, because when you look at your home fixtures in the second half of the season, he's not quite so kind, mate.
Yeah, I think obviously our home form's always been much better. Last season was obviously again because it was
Mm.
such a bad season. It sort of it slants it slightly. It doesn't look as good as it was. But obviously the first two seasons our home form was always fantastic and our away form was much worse. Last year it evened out slightly more because of how bad it was. Um, but I guess the positive spin on it is having the nice fit home fixtures to begin with, and then going into maybe slightly easier away fixtures later in the season means that we've almost got rid of yeah, letting Liverpool away, fine. Well, at least then we got them at home and it gives us a chance where we're always pretty good against the big six at home. Well, really probably more than big six now, isn't it? There's more of them. But then going away to some of the clubs where we might have more of a chance probably puts us in a better stead, I'd say.
Yeah, I think because of that slant towards the home fixtures, it kind of makes you right for attacking for rotation in fantasy, if that's what people are looking for.
Yeah.
Is there anything you've spotted that looks like great for rotation with yourselves?
I haven't really looked to be honest on like who were good for rotation. I think Palace is one of the ones
Yeah.
that's looks quite good rotation for us. So I've seen a lot of the Flekken, Dean Henderson, whether he's even starting goalkeeper for Palace, but yeah, I've seen a lot of the rotation between us and Palace, looking sort of those sort of areas. But that's the only one I've really looked at, to be honest.
Southampton's another one,
Is
interestingly.
it?
And obviously, there's a few 4.0s there where you can get a real good run of really nice home games, actually, if you looked at the two to start with. It feels like when we look at players here, we should start with the main man, England's saviour, Ivan Toney. What's the thought at the moment? Is he going to stay or not?
$1 million question, I guess. Well, $40 million, I guess. I don't honestly have no idea at this moment in time. I think it's similar to what happened with Raya last year because it seemed at the start of the window we had all the cards and held all the aces. And as the window got further and further along, and obviously you guys then bought Vicario because obviously you were linked quite heavily with him. It sort of just became of like, well, now really it's just Arsenal that could come in for him, and so they sort of took the power away from Brentford. And the fact he was on a 1 year deal, it was like sort of, well, this is it. Whatever they offer us, it's sort of either we sell him or we just keep him. Goalkeeper is obviously slightly different because it's one of those where um, finding someone to replace someone that can score 20 goals a season is slightly different from someone who can save goals. So this one's slightly different. I think the only teams that have really looked interested in him is yourselves, obviously Spurs and West Ham, which sort of is slightly baffling. But obviously they've now bought. Well, it seems to be like Fulkrug's going towards them from Dortmund. So again, it's similar. It seems to be we're in the similar stage where it's okay. So he's either going to Spurs. United seem to have some interest in him, but obviously they've just bought Xerxes and yeah, Hoyland's out injured, but it seems a bit of a mad one for them to be spending that amount of money and then having three starting strikers. So again, it looks like it's sort of just the Spurs option that's there. I mean, I know Arsenal were interested, but they sort of distanced themselves as well. And so for me, it's one of those where I can see him staying now because
Even with a year left on his contract.
I guess it's one of those where like
He's not going to sign, is he? That's
I
what we
don't. I
hear.
mean, No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it was one of those where if completely, if all interest went for him and he had nothing, and it was one of those where he's in last year of his contract, maybe he does look and go, right, actually, no one else is in for me. Maybe I'm at the best place for me to be at the moment because he's not. I mean, he's not the youngest man either. What is he, 28? And maybe he, if he does happen to stay, I think then potentially there might be a change of mindset at that point. But at the moment, it's one of those where I don't see. Obviously, with Thiago being out, we do have options there. So I think if he did leave, there's definitely cover there, and we're fine from that point of view. It'd be good to get someone else in up front just to sort of give us more cover. But I think we would be fine. But I think it's one of those where. So I mean, if we sold Toney and then got relegated,
Yeah.
surely the value and how much money we'd lose by getting relegated is worth a lot more than what Ivan Toney's going to go for. If the rumors are true that he's going to go for now 40 million or 35 million, it's dropping by the day, it seems.
Someone's going to pay that, mate, aren't they?
I mean, it seems crazy. Obviously his history in the Premier League has been good. It's been fantastic. What we were just talking about last summer when everyone was chatting about him, and he was the second top scorer, English goal scorer behind Harry Kane. So I mean, and I think he was third top goal scorer in the league on that season. So he's had obviously 6 months off for the betting issue. Came back and I think he started really well. Obviously went off the boil a little bit. I don't think his time with England did him any harm either. But it just seems a bit of a crazy one that no one's coming in for him. But it's almost like, again, like with the Raya situation, let's just keep leaving it to the last minute so we can get him for the cheapest amount of money. And so then I think at that point you just go, well, do we keep him and just go, fine? We spent 10 million on him. So when you think of it like that, we're losing 10 million.
If someone goes, oh, there's 25 million, take it or leave it, I think you're going to say, no, leave it. But
yeah,
clearly we'd said sort of like this time last year, sort of, I mean, obviously by this point he was obviously looking at the ban, but if you'd not had it, we were saying, 70 to 80,
yeah,
maybe even more if a top club really wanted to push the boat out and get him. Now it doesn't feel like that. Plus, I think you're a club who won't be bullied.
no,
So people know that they almost want you to open your hand and say, okay, right, we, like what you said with the Raya situation, we've now got a problem where we've got to make a decision on what we want to do with him. Because I don't know if it will get late enough on where if we get to the final week of the window and genuinely there's no interest within the Premier League, whether you start picking up the phone to people overseas.
yeah. I think. Well, I mean, Frank came out yesterday after the Watford game, obviously the friendly we had yesterday, and said basically that Toney's a Brentford player, and to be honest, I'd love to keep him at Brentford. Obviously, he's going to say that, but he said he again made the point of the fact that we are a selling club and we're not a club that is there. But at the other side of things is we're also a very profitable club. We have no issues with any of the PSR that obviously a lot of the other clubs have. And yeah, as you said, we're looking at spending 40, 50 million on players. Yeah, if you don't mind stealing Archie Gray from us again, that'd be great. But yeah, so I think it might be one of those where if it gets towards the end of the window and we got a week left and Tottenham come in and say, someone comes in and says, 35, 40 million. I wouldn't even be surprised if we just say, you know what, no, because it's one of those where, well, then we haven't got the time to reinvest it unless there's someone specific that they already have in mind. But it doesn't then give us enough time to go and use the money because that would be the only reason to sell him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think for my club, if we were to get into the final week and haven't bought a forward,
yeah,
then there's going to be some interest and some calls
sure.
made. But I still even feel like something like Chelsea could
Yeah,
come back around.
definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Obviously, yeah.
I think it'd be a late deal. Do you think he'll start for you in game week 1?
I don't think he will actually. So
Even
he's
if
not
he's
come.
still your player?
Yeah, I think so. I think because I mean he's just come back from holiday. Sorry, well he's not. So he didn't play yesterday in the Watford game. He's still on holiday at the moment. He comes back for the Wolfsburg game, is what Frank's come out and said. He said he will be back for the Wolfsburg game. It obviously depends on how many minutes he gets there, but obviously he's been playing the front three of Schade, Wissa, and Mbeumo in pre-season, and they've played the first three friendlies, I believe. Also, the three main friendlies together. And so it seems obviously he's an improvement on Wissa playing up front, but it's one of those where maybe the first game he doesn't bring him straight back in because obviously he's not trained with the club, and obviously he's had more of a break because of the England duty. So
Yeah, and also the speculation is going to be hanging around him. isn't it? If
Yeah,
he is
so it's
still your player.
yeah,
Plus, it's worth acknowledging, mate, how many games without a goal at the end of last season?
quite a lot. Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't the greatest end of the season for him.
Did you
Um,
feel, with respect, that he wasn't playing to his 100% maximum?
um, no, I think for me, I don't think his mindset's. And there's been a few things that come out which you always sort of seem to chuckle at, where it's like, oh, Arsenal aren't interested because of his mentality and his attitude. I don't think he ever doesn't give full. Whenever you watch him, he's always trying his best and doing everything. Um, just don't think he played very well towards the end of the season. He just looked a little bit leggy, and maybe he sort of just like the fact he'd had 6 months off, come back, and obviously was got straight back into it. There was talk that he was playing with a bit of a niggle as well. So obviously he missed a couple of games through injury when he came back. So I think he played about 4 games, and then he had a few games where he didn't play, and then obviously came back into the squad. So I think there may have been that it was one of those where he wanted to play because obviously the England place was up for places, and obviously the fact that we weren't quite safe. I think it was one of those where okay, right, you had to play, but maybe if we're sitting mid-table and doing all right, and he gets that
Two,
niggle, then maybe just rest him.
two quick questions based on England.
Mm.
When he came on with a minute to go against Slovakia, what were you thinking?
Um,
You take the piss or like what were you thinking?
I don't know. Like, I guess I don't know. I guess it's a slightly different mindset from being from a Brentford fan, because the fact you have Brentford players just playing for the England team anyway, you're going, oh, go on, get on the pitch, sort of thing. Um, yeah, I mean, I would have loved to see him play more, obviously. But then I guess I don't know. I guess for me, obviously, I've still got a massive affinity for Ollie Watkins as well. So when I see either of those two come on, the fact they're both, oh, come through Brentford at some point, obviously Toney being there still, and obviously Watkins coming from Brentford to Villa. Whenever I see either of them play, I'm like, oh yeah, go on, just do what you do. And yeah, so I think I celebrated Toney's penalty. Obviously, was a
Did you have
massive
any
occasion.
doubt?
Oh no, I think it's one of those moments where just because obviously what's happened with other takers and the potential of like if he does miss this, the amount of abuse he's going to get. That was my only like
Yeah.
fear, if that makes sense. But the fact I was like, of all the penalty takers that stepped up, as soon as he stepped up, I was with my mates and I was just like, well, he ain't missing this, is he? And I might have said that a bit too soon. And I was like, sat there and I was like, please don't miss this now.
I think
But no.
everybody had that same thought. It was like Tony will score, but then when he got there, it was like, what if he doesn't?
Ooh.
Oh.
Ah, yeah, big up the fact that he's a massive penalty taker just for it to miss it. So
Obviously, if he does end up leaving you, at least you bought a replacement, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. We seem to like buying players with injuries, so it's
Dear mate. We're talking about Igor Thiago, who Clayton and I spoke about on the transfer window podcast a couple of weeks ago. I was actually thinking he was actually of a real profile that he would fit into you as the potential Tony replacement. We think that he's probably not going to play football in 2024, having picked up a knee injury. That's a sickener, mate.
yeah. So yeah, played the first friendly 45 minutes against Wimbledon, scored 2 goals, and yeah, and then it was reported pretty much a week later that yeah, he's done I think it's a meniscus injury and he's had surgery now, and they're expecting him back late December 24, but that means that he ain't going to play until January, which is yeah, just it's
So
just
what does that
frustrating.
mean now? Like if Tony goes, does that mean you go into the market again? Do you stick with what you've got, or could you see yourself putting an offer there to Everton, for example, to save more pay again?
So we're linked. So there's a small rumor going around at the moment. They're linked with Arthur Cabral from Benfica. It's a loan. It looks like if it does go through, it'll be a loan deal with potential obligation to buy based on starts, I think. So I imagine we will go back into the market because we will be left quite short, I'd say, up front if for example Wissa was to get injured, mainly because obviously then who fills it? We have lots of players who can play in multiple positions, but obviously we still have to put 11 men out on the pitch. So you are getting to the point where our squad depth is getting really low if something was to happen to, let's say, Vista as well, or Schade, let's say. So
Is it
um
though? I'm just thinking, even if we remove Tony and Thiago from this, you said Bumo, Vissa, Schade, front three. Keane Lewis Potter, I think, impressed quite a bit at points when he
where's that I
played
lost you, mate?
last season as well. What's that, Tom? Sorry.
Oh no, I'm back. Sorry, I lost you for a second then.
Tom's away with the aliens. You've got Wissa, Schade, and Mbeumo as a potential front three.
Yeah,
Keane, Lewis, Potter as
yeah.
part of that as well. Are you? Is that too short to go with that four?
I mean, it's just so. I mean, if one of those gets injured, then you're down to a bare three.
Yeah,
I can't even think of anyone else that comes into the team. I mean, you've got like going really then down into the depths of what we've got. You've got then like Miles Pert Harris, who played centre mid against Benfica, who was with Portsmouth last year on loan. And he's played a few games in the Prem where he's come off the bench, but I mean he's not quite there yet, I'd say. He's very young. Um, and then you're looking at B team players really, and you're dropping down. Then I'm struggling to think then who comes in. You know, even from like 60 minutes. Well, who do you take off? Because you've got no one to bring on really. That's sort of where we're at potentially if we don't
but
bring
if
anyone else
Tony
in.
stays, that's strong enough, isn't it? With the
Tony stays in,
five,
yeah, I'm happy with five is plenty. I mean, that gives you sort of good coverage and good versatility with the fact that we've got players that can play in different areas, if that makes sense.
yeah.
And
What
yeah, that'd be fine.
particularly what we think might be the starting front three, they could
Yeah,
all play through the middle.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so there's good
Yeah,
variation with that. I don't suppose we're considering Tony for fantasy right now. We can't, right? Okay.
no. I mean, obviously, there's really good forward assets you can pick from anyway, and just the uncertainty on who's he going to be playing for, and then whoever he does, if he does move, he probably won't go straight into the team. If he stays, I don't think he probably starts first game, or yeah, I can't see him starting first game. But then it's like, well, you're starting him for Palace, and then bring him. Well, then you've got straight into Liverpool second game. So
Okay. Bryan Mbeumo.
yeah,
I'm not seeing him in many teams at the moment, and I think that
he
might be an oversight. Go on, Tom.
yeah, I mean, so if Tony is to go, he's going to be our penalty taker. Even if Thiago was fit, I think he would have been penalty taker because his record is obviously brilliant for us, and obviously the penalties he's taken for us. Yeah, he's definitely taking some leaves out of Ivan Toney's book with the way he takes penalties.
And
Um,
Mbeumo's one of the best penalty takers in the league.
I'd say so, and the fact he doesn't take penalties is crazy. Yeah, I think he's 6 for 7. I think in penalties taken in his career. So I mean, it's not like it's a huge amount of penalties he's taken, but obviously he usually sits behind Ivan Toney. But when you do see him take them, they're of a very similar ilk to
Yeah,
Ivan.
you
So
think he's going to score?
yeah, again, I think he should score. Well, I watched the game yesterday. I watched the extended highlights yesterday, and he should have probably scored against Watford yesterday. Had a good few opportunities. Looks really good. Looks really on it. Obviously, he's had the whole summer off as well. So um, yeah, I guess the only problem with him is the pricing. It's maybe slightly too expensive, really, to go because obviously there's a lot of players at similar prices which are interesting, I guess.
If you'd have told me his ownership be less than his price, I wouldn't have believed you.
What is it? Is his own right? 7%, yeah, 7%. What's his ownership at the moment? I don't know.
6.9%. I might be
Right,
wrong
okay.
by the time this comes out, but I don't expect there's going to be anything massive that
Yeah.
changes. He became a community darling
Oh yeah,
last
absolutely.
season. And again, with those home games, do you think it's a case of those three away games in the first five is enough to have made people cold about him?
I think so. I think it's just like it's I think it's the amount of money you've got to spend on him to then am I going to bench him against Liverpool, for example, or bench him against Man City maybe, but
You don't bench a player like that now, do you? I think,
I don't think you need to be
particularly if
honest.
Tony did go.
Yeah, because I know you got penalties anyway, so it's like one of those where he's definitely I think he's a good pick. I think yeah, I mean obviously he's one of my favourite players, so he's just sort of the way he plays and the fact he'll be playing out on the right actually I think benefits him. I think he's always looked much better on the right than through the middle. So if we're playing 4-3-3, which seems to be we've done it in every preseason friendly so far, mainly because of the lack of fit defenders at the moment, which I'm sure we'll get onto. But
Mm.
yeah, I think he plays and operates much better on the right than he does through the centre.
Yeah, I think historically what we've known with you is fixtures like Liverpool, City, and Tottenham away. You may well go to obviously a back five,
Yeah,
but I think in those home games you've got, you'll play a back four in
yeah.
all of those home games, and it will largely be a 4-3-3 or close variants of that. So in this friendly at Watford on Saturday, who played as the
Mm.
central forward? Was it Wissa or Schade?
Vissa, no Vissa, yeah,
Who's ahead in terms of bracketing from those two players? Like if Tony stayed and was going to play game week
yeah.
one,
Who drops?
yeah,
It's really difficult. I mean, so I'm quite biased because I think Kevin Schade looks like a fantastic player. Vissa played really well last season, and for me, before last season, for me, Vissa was the one on the chopping block. You look at your first 11, you go, well, where can we actually improve the team? And for me, he wasn't. I think he's a good player, but I just don't think he's a great player. I just don't think he's a Premier League level player. Um, and Kevin Schade looked brilliant when he was coming on, the way he takes on players and things like that. And I think his pace on the left makes it better. I mean, if you've got like a Mbeumo who's not, I mean, he's not slow, but then you've got Toney, who's obviously not the fastest. Having Kevin Schade on the left is really nice. I think he's a really, really exciting player. And the fact he got injured last season, I think he would have played, obviously would have played a lot more games last season if he didn't get that injury. So for me, I'd go Schade on the left personally, but I think it will chop and change. Um, that being said, I think the front three will be the front three that's played so far at the moment until obviously some confirmations around Toney happen. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, if it doesn't look like Tony's going to start, I think we can assume that will be the front three, and particularly Keane Lewis Part hasn't played minutes in pre-season yet, but
no,
it's a minor problem. We do
yeah,
think he'll be available, but therefore the other three are ahead of him in terms of fitness and may well have been ahead of him anyway. If we were generally of the opinion that Tony wasn't going to start in game week one, I said to you, punt one of Vissa or Schade for game week one, what you picking, and forget their positioning just in terms of that player, one game.
well, Kevin Schade is currently in my draft, not
Okay.
Bryan Mbeumo. So um, I think his price is really good at 5.5. I think I love the way he plays. Um, Obviously scored a couple of goals already in pre-season. And yeah, well, he scored more than that because obviously he scored a couple of goals in Wimbledon as well. So he looks on it. He's definitely fit. He's definitely played the minutes. And for me, I think he's a much more assured footballer than Visser. So I personally go
So you
for
think
Schade.
Schade would possibly be ahead?
I think
It's
so. I think so.
interesting that.
Yeah. I'd like. I mean, I'd like to see that him ahead of Visser. Really.
I mentioned it as well because Schade obviously at 5.5, he's rotatable, I think.
Yeah. Exactly.
Whereas Visser at 6 doesn't feel like that from a fantasy perspective. And to go back to the Southampton point, obviously you've got like Adam Armstrong and Brereton
Mm.
Diaz are both coming at that price now. You could look to rotate a Schade, but I don't see Schade getting spoken about at all. When you hear about
No.
5.5s at the moment, it's like Hudson-Odoi, Minter, a couple of others. Schade gets no mention, but you're saying he's a likely for you, yeah?
At the moment he's in there. I mean, knowing my bias, I'll probably rotate back round to Brian. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the closer we get and the more we'll see. If the less we see Ivan Toney, the more I'll push towards Kevin Schade, I think.
Okay. That's interesting. I mean, we know you're going to have three Brentford, Tom, anyway, because it's almost a given for you. I am very surprised that Bryan Mbeumo's not one of them, though.
I
And
just
maybe that speaks volume of why his ownership is low. If you
Yeah, I
feel
mean,
like that,
well, I think it's one of those where I mean, so I've been obviously messing around, and obviously there's lots of talk about whether you go Haaland, Salah, or both. And so I
or
tried to
neither,
put or neither if you're absolutely bonkers, I guess.
depending on your
But
cojones. Hold on, that might be
yeah,
bonkers. Carry on.
yeah, it's true, absolutely. Um, so I've if I go with it's one of those where I think if I go without so at the moment if I go without Salah, then I'm going to put in. So if I had to choose between the two, minus price, Bryan Mbeumo's in there 100% for me over Kevin Schade because I'm trying to find and scrape the extra pounds if I do go for Salah as well. Then it's like, well, actually, Schade is a really good alternative because it's a million and a half saving. Yes, you don't have penalties, but I think he's playing well enough, or looks like he's playing well enough and he's rotated. Like obviously, from what you said, he's rotatable then at that value as well. That he makes it a bit more interesting, I'd say, essentially from that side.
Yeah, I wonder if you might pick up a little bit more interest based on the Brentford Southampton rotation is quite interesting, I think. If Vissel was a 5.5 midfielder, would it still be Schade of the two?
Yes, for me, yeah. I
So
just,
therefore,
I
if
get,
we're looking at Vissa versus say Muniz or Chris Wood, I take it your advice would be one of the others.
yes, I think so.
Okay, might be back to the drawing board for me there, Tom, without giving away any spoilers. I was hoping you was going to be quite high on Johan Vissa. 16 attacking returns last year, 12 goals scored, mate.
I just haven't. I mean, watching the friendlies, he's just not been in the position as much as the other two have. It's almost like he's dropping and doing a bit of like the Toney role, and Mbeumo and Schade are getting ahead of him. Because all of the opportunities are coming to them at the moment. I just don't. I haven't seen. I mean, Wissa just hasn't been on the score sheet. I don't think he's had any assists yet. It sort of just seems to be. I don't know what it is. It just seems that those two just seem to be getting into the much more attacking positions. Like Mbeumo should have scored yesterday. Schade scored a header from a cross, but he also had another opportunity as well where he could, probably should have done a little bit better, but pre-season doesn't really matter. But those two just seem to be getting further forward than what Wissa does at the moment.
Okay. Keane Lewis Potter impressed when I saw him in the
Yeah,
second half of last season. As I said, he hasn't played yet in pre-season. That's one that needs monitoring at 5 million, though, isn't it?
yeah. For me, I must say, if I've been trying to find more information on him. I can't really find anything. And they did. Frank came out yesterday and did a full like release on all of the players that were missing from the Watford game, and he wasn't even mentioned, which I thought was really odd.
So there is a
Um,
quote I found from a journalist, Sam Tabato, who I know was at Vicarage Road on Saturday. He said Thomas Frank said on Keane Lewis Potter's absence, he has a small muscle injury. Again, very confident he'll be available for the first game of the season against Crystal Palace.
that's I mean that's
But that's
positive,
literally,
honestly.
it's only him that I could find that from.
Well, they did a full release yesterday of all of the Frank talking about all of the injured players, and they didn't even mention him, which I thought was really odd. Um, so yeah, yeah, I'm a little bit in the dark with him really at the moment of what's going on.
Yeah,
So,
you certainly couldn't start with him. You'd have to rule him
oh
out of
no, yeah,
complete consideration at the moment. But I think a player to monitor as the season goes on. And I think worthwhile saying as well, we've spoken about your really good home fixtures, but off the back of that fixture at Tottenham in game week 5, there's a really good overall run, sort of game week 6 to 13,
yeah.
where I can see people landing there. People wildcard in game week 6, there'll be real interest in Boomos and if there's some clarity between Wissa, Schade. Any of these other midfielders worth consideration for you at all, Tom? When we look at like Damsgaard at 5 million,
Not really. Damsgaard it's looked pretty good actually. To be fair, he's been given a bit more freedom to go forward, but yeah, and it would definitely have to be a wait and see on that one whether that becomes any interest. We've got quite a few midfielders that could potentially come in, I guess, as well, and he's not really set the world alight for us so far. So no,
Matthias
would be
Jensen, 12 attacking returns 2 seasons ago, but only 7 last season. 5.5 is too much, isn't it? I mean, same price as
yeah,
Schade.
Schade, exactly, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Any of these 4.5s likely to get any minutes, Tom?
Ihor Yarmochuk potentially. Played quite a lot of games for us last season. He's 4.5, I believe,
Yeah,
isn't he?
he did 670 minutes played, only started 6 times,
Yeah,
but young player, Ukrainian player, isn't he?
yeah,
I quite liked him when I saw him a few times actually. So he would
definitely.
be the one of the 4.5s if people want to consider that, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I mean, he's actually going to get some minutes. Yeah, I mean,
People will
he's
want to know if he's nailed, right? And he's
oh no,
not.
definitely. Oh
No,
no, no,
yeah.
not. I mean, your midfield three of Norgard, Jensen, and Janolt's probably still your three. So he'll come on, but again, it's not really worth it. I'd say. There's probably other options I think you can go for instead.
Yeah, okay. One option that people are looking at is the goalkeeper, Mark Flekken. I'm presuming people haven't seen Watford's goal from Saturday, because that'd probably give them the frighteners again, I should imagine. Is he, in the first instance, is he definitely number one?
Yeah, no, definitely. Because
You
obviously we've
sure?
signed. Yeah, yeah, no, I would say you had to be questioning myself. No, 100%. Yeah. Um, no, I've spoken to a few people about it. I think so. Obviously, so we've signed Valdmarison, I believe is that right?
You tell me, mate, sure player. Hakon Valdimarsson, as far as I can see, Icelandic goalkeeper.
Well, yeah. So and obviously he's Iceland's number one. Signing
Mm.
from Elfsberg. Looks very good. Very young though. He's only 21, I believe, 22. Um, but I think the first half of the season last year for Mark Flekken was an absolute stinker. We can all see, and there wasn't, he was shocking. Um, but I thought the second half of the season he was much much better. Um, and I think he's going to get better again this season. The Watford goal I saw yesterday it wasn't great,
No, it wasn't, mate.
but I think it's one of those where it's his first game back for us that he's played. Um, the actual goal itself was a deflection which went past him. It's one of those where like it's the classic. If it didn't go in, no one would be talking about it because no
I
one would
bet he
even know it
tries to turn
happened.
on the ball about 3 times, Tom.
I
I
thought he
just
looked all right
if
to
it
be
was a
fair though.
Premier League game, do you think he just launches it down the
Oh yeah,
pitch?
100%.
Oh,
Again,
okay,
I
so
like
maybe it
I think it's
doesn't
one
happen.
and to be fair, there was I mean the lack of support he had in that box yesterday was laughable. There was everyone sort of just looked at him going like, "Come on, then Mark, what are you going to do?" It's almost like they wanted him to take on 3 players and to head up the pitch. So no, I think he's going to have a better season this year. He looked much better towards the end of last season, I thought, and the fact it became a little bit more stable in front of him, and I think he even did like a news release um, about 3 days ago, talking about how bad the start of his season was last year, and that basically he signed he started talking to like a mental coach, and he was really, and then he said he believed that towards the end of the season he became the goalkeeper that he knows he is. Because obviously last season we're talking about Mark Flekken as a 2-time Bundesliga Golden Glove winner.
Mm.
So, there's that player there. And it's the fact that, the fact he's had a bad start. I think the fact he had a bad start to the last season, no one really then paid attention towards the end of the season. I think he ended up at like fifth highest goal score or something. Was it fifth or sixth?
If it was the fifth highest goal scorer, that would be remarkable. But I did see someone post, Tom, that he had the highest XG of goalkeepers last season. And obviously, you do get 10 points for a goal now.
I mean,
Um,
there you go.
yeah,
All he needs is 3 or 4. So,
Mark Flekken is as likely as
I
anyone.
mean, I guess when you've got Toney and Thiago out, you can stick them up front because we run out of strikers. So,
He ain't going to run out of someone to take penalties, so mate. So you can forget that one.
yeah.
He is the most owned 4.5 goalkeeper at the moment. Do you
Okay.
think that's right?
Yes, I'd say so. I mean, because defensively we've always been pretty good. I mean, we're always really good at allowing previously, historically, we've always been the team that allows players to shoot from outside the box and doesn't actually let players shoot from inside the box. I think the season before, I think we allowed the most shots from outside the box and conceded the least amount of shots from inside the box. Um, so there's always going to be save points there. Um, Defensively, last year we were atrocious, but defensively the years before we were much better. Again, mainly injury related, I'd say. And so if we can finally get some players back fit, then we might start looking a bit better.
Yeah, it feels like this is a spot that people are really struggling with at the moment. We don't at this moment know who's going to play in goal for Chelsea, and judging by some of the most recent friendlies, you might not want to do that either. You'd mentioned Henderson earlier, but Sam Johnson's there as well. Areola at West Ham is another alternative, although people were sick of him when he was 4.0 last year, so I'm not sure how they're going to feel at 4.5. And then your likes of Pickford have obviously jumped up to 5.0. And you do look at Flecken at 4.5 and think, I think there's a few things you want to ask. Can he do better than last season? I think that's what you're looking for in a 4 point. Can he
Yeah.
improve on what he did last season? I think the answer to that is probably yes, as in him individually, and obviously you having more players back fit, although you don't currently. I
No.
think if people are looking for a long-term solution where people have identified, do you know what, I want a wild card in December, then I really like him as a shout.
Yeah.
For those who want a wild card in the first sort of 5 or 6, I think I'd want to look at something else.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
That
because
would be my
obviously,
take at the moment.
yeah, definitely, especially with the start of like you said, our away fixtures, you're just hoping for save points in those games, I think. So, yeah, definitely. I like him as a player. I think he will get better this season. I think he'll do better this season. Um, yeah, as I thought towards the end of last season, I thought he looked a lot more assured. And there was a lot less talk about, oh, he's crap, let's get him rid of him, let's get someone else in, sort of thing. So, yeah,
No, I think he has the combination of what could make a really good 4.5 goalkeeper. I just think he's more of a longer term decision rather than a shorter term. Is he in for you?
yeah, he is. Yeah,
Okay. Is his number 2 in for you, Valdemarson? Because
not at the
you
moment, but
can
it's
do that, can't you?
yeah.
8.5 for the pair for Brentford keepers is reasonable.
I think if I wasn't, well, I mean, you know my joys of how biased I am. If I didn't want to play 3 Brentford players in my team, then I think it's a really good option. But I'm more than likely to have 3 playing players instead. So
But when I look at all the teams that would be expected with respect to being the bottom half, your club feels like the only one where I'd think I could get blocked.
yeah,
from potentially shit. I can't see me wanting three Everton or three Wolves or three Fulham. I know the teams below that, the promoting. I can't see it. With you, I feel like there is a case where I could end up with a Flekken and Mbeumo and think, oh, I do want Schade as well. Like I could see that.
Yeah, especially I mean the run after, like you said, the later run after the sort of the first few
From game
games
six,
is
yeah.
really good. So it might be that you go, actually, we can that you want the extra player, and if you stop yourself doing that with a 4.0 goalkeeper that's, in my opinion, don't think is going to play anyway, then
Fine.
it seems a bit pointless.
Your mate Strakosha's gone, hasn't he?
Yeah, so gone on a free as well, so which is yeah,
Well,
we did
came on a
decide
free and he left on a free.
came on a free, paid his wages, still had 2 years left in his contract, and we decided, you know what, the poor lad's not played any games for us, so let's give him a break and let him go. So
The
yeah,
other thing that's a little off-putting in terms of Flecken is obviously something that you'd already alluded to in terms of injuries.
yes,
All right. Henry and Hickey, firstly,
yeah.
who were such losses for you last year. And I won't be the only person who thought of Rico Henry watching England in the summer, even, I think. Um, when do we expect them back, Tom?
So I mean, Frank's come out and said is classic. Really, he's gone. Oh well, we're hoping they'll be back for game week 1. We think that they could make it for the team for game week 1.
Rico Henry's definitely not, mate.
Well, I mean, they've not played any minutes.
Exactly.
They're not even been on the bench. They did both. Well, Rico Henry did. I'm not sure if actually Picky did, but they both did the 1K test that we do at the start of the season. And the fact he was in and doing that obviously is better. You know, the fact he's actually been in training, been doing things. I've seen a picture of Hickey doing the rounds in training, but again, it's like I understand Rico Henry's one because obviously the injury was a big injury. Obviously, that's a big recovery from that. Hickey's one's still really unsure of what actually was wrong with him. I think because it was one of those where it just kept going around. Oh, it was this,
Well,
but it
we
kept being
still
something
thought
else
he was probably sort of April time. There was a lot of hope he was still going to make the
for the
Scotland squad.
Euros. Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I don't really understand what's happened to him. Whether it's just a reoccurring, it just keeps coming back sort of thing. I mean, we need one of them back as soon as possible, really, because it's looking pretty dire on the fullback area. Might maybe even come in for another loan signing for Sergio Regular on this point because it's yeah, just we do need them back. And Frank's come out and said that he's hoping they'll be back in time for, as in like being on the, I assume will be on the bench for game week 1, but it doesn't sound very positive that they'll be playing at all there. So
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, there's no interest for you in making the Sergio Reguilon deal permanent
yeah,
unless Henry had a setback. We discussed in January that I thought it was ideal
yeah,
to you to cover that position for the last 3, 4 months of last season. But we don't think that'll be a permanent move. Apparently, he's holding out for someone who's playing in Europe anyway, mate.
really.
Who else is injured from your defenders currently?
Well, Mads Roslev didn't play yesterday.
Yeah.
They said Frank did come out and say that he'll be back for the Wolfsburg game, which is the next friendly, the final friendly before we start the season. So that should be fine. Um, the other player that's covered, obviously, at the back is Jan Alt, and Jan Alt also missed the game yesterday, but they've also said that he should be back for the Wolfsburg game next week. So, yeah, there's still a few players that are out, which is a little bit not so great. A Pinnock as well. Sorry, he was missing yesterday
Ethan
as
Pinnock
well.
didn't play on Saturday, yeah. But again, they said he'll be fine.
Again, the same thing. So those 3 players, they've said they should be back by Wolfsburg, but
It
he'll.
sets you off on a bad start, though, doesn't it?
It's
When
not
when you're
great.
playing in pre-season, you've got like 5 or 6 players injured. You feel like you're carrying it through your season. You got players at different fitness levels as they're building, etc. And I think it's worth it's I mean it's clearly obvious because of issues you had last year throughout the squad. You did suffer somewhat defensively. It's wild these guys are at 4.5
Yeah,
because Ben Mee was in team of the season 2 years ago, wasn't
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think he was.
he? Why are we not considering him at 4.5?
I have seen a lot of it, but I would also not be keen to go for Ben Mee. Um,
Because
I just don't know if he's going to play, to be honest.
as in you don't know if he's first choice anymore.
I don't think so. No, I mean, if you're going for a 4.5 million defender for Brentford, Ethan Pinnock is the only one to pick, I'd say at the moment.
Okay.
Um, you've got Christoph Ayer, who obviously plays centre back and has also played. I mean, he debuted left back last night, or this afternoon, and he also plays right back. Um, so he's there. I think the fact they're going, obviously you've got Nathan Collins, who again I thought terrible start of the season, but started to play better towards the end of the season. But those two players can both play centre back. There's a young Korean centre back who played yesterday. He's been promoted to the first team, but I think he'll be on the bench mainly. Um, and yeah, again,
4.0 alert, Tom. Don't go there now.
no, no, oh no, no, no,
Okay.
absolutely
He's
not.
only
But
19. Kim Ji-soo, you're talking about.
yeah, yeah. He's been promoted from the B team to the first team, but he will be on the bench mainly, I imagine. But again, you've got Collins, me, and Aya, who all can play that centre back position. Obviously, it's a five back. You pick two of them. If it's a four back, you pick one. If it's a four back, you probably see Aya move to right back. But all I know is that Ethan Pinnock will play as long as he's fit in the centre with a partner. My assumption will be in the fact that Benmi's only got a 1 year contract extension. They'll be pushing to have Nathan Collins playing with Ethan Pinnock more so to build that partnership for the following season.
So if people were looking for combinations, let's just say, Pickford and Pinnock as an example, or
Mm.
like Flekken and Brantwaite if he's fit, like what sort of combinations you prefer there, hearing that from the Brentford perspective?
Well, um, it's a hard one, really. Flecken's going to get save points, but obviously with the new bonus point system, whether that's going to affect him getting any bonus points going forward is really minimal. Pinnock loves the header, so that's the only two things really. So,
Plays for
so
Brentford, Tom. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly,
you're long throw merchants at the best of times, mate.
exactly. That's true. But they've put Pinnock in the middle now. So Pinnock doesn't take any, Pinnock used to take some of the long throws. He doesn't take anything anymore. So Jensen takes all of the long throws because they want Pinnock in the box to win the header. So he
It's
does
not
have
it's
more.
not normally the first header that's going to score from the throw, though, is it?
A couple of assists in there. That's fine for me.
It's not Rory Delap taking the throws, mate.
No, no. Yeah, I don't know. I prefer Flecken really because I think it's just an easy one. You can just stick in there and go, okay, nice and easy. You know he's going to play. It's just keep it simple sort of thing.
But I
Um,
think I think a lot of them will come down to prefer the goalkeeper. Like if you mention others that we've mentioned, if I said to you Areola or West Ham defender, I think you think Areola. I think with
yeah.
the Palace, if you knew which one was going to play and goal, it's probably Palace. If you knew which Chelsea goalkeeper, rather than
Oh
their
yeah.
4.5, it's probably the goalkeeper. So they all fall into that line. I guess what I was trying to get at is there enough for you to say, yeah, I would definitely go Flecken or Pinnock over Pinnock, or I'd be happy to make the sacrifice to go with a Pinnock, who I think could be competitive with Flecken.
I'd happily go either or, I think, on it. It's not really one that I'm going, oh, I'm definitely going to go this one over this one. So, yeah, I don't really have that much of a preference, I'd say.
Okay. Likely starting 11 as it stands, game week one then for you.
Uh, so Flecken in goal, right back's going to be, Christoph Ayer's going to start right back. And then you'll have, hoping Pinnock will be fine and fit. So Collins, Pinnock. Sorry, I think I will play left back because right back will have to be Roslev then. So yeah, I will be at left back.
That's a mess, that, mate.
It's not great. Yeah, it's not great.
Or you could play Yano at left back as well as another option,
He
isn't it?
could do, but in the preseason, so yesterday he played Ira at left back. Because I think he needs the cover there for the first game. I think that's his thoughts is who can he play left back to begin
Yeah.
with. So
I mean, Palace might have Ismail Assar playing out there now
yeah, I mean, to be
as
honest,
well.
what I imagine if they do go for that four at the back, then you've got Roslev who's slightly more attacking and not very good defensively, and obviously Aya who's more of a seasoned centre back, really more so. So you can then sort of fill into that three if needed, with Roslev going forward slightly more. So it does sort of work, but it's not. It doesn't fill me with joy. But I think it will. So I think it'll be 4-3-3. Those four at the back, and I think it will be Aya at left back because obviously we won't. I don't think we'll have Hickey or Henry back fit at that point. Um, I mean, yesterday we played a B team centre midfielder at right back, so that's how bare bones we are at fullback. Midfield three will be Jan Alt Norgard and Jensen, and then the front three will be Mbeumo on the right, Schade on the left, and Wissa up top.
Okay. Good stuff. Where do you think you finish?
11th.
But I mean, I don't know why you hesitate for so long because you sent that to me a couple of days ago.
Well, no, I was trying to I was trying to remember which position I put us in, so I think I put 11th.
Do you think any other correspondent predicted higher? for you?
No, definitely not.
Okay, that sums it up. Do you think any of the correspondents predicted you to go down?
I don't think so.
Four.
Really?
Hmm. I was a bit surprised about that as well, actually. But I do think it is difficult. It is difficult when you look at the clubs
Yeah.
who've been down there like you were last year and think, oh, they will go down. It's tough.
I think it's one of those though, because I think a lot of people from last year didn't. We were so forgotten about with how bad our injuries were. I think from a first team point of view, I think we were only behind Newcastle for first team minutes lost. And so therefore, how do you get some structure and some consistency if you don't have first team players? I think I tweeted a tweet about how many games were missed by players throughout the season last year, and I think the only player that didn't miss a single minute of the only player that didn't miss a game through injury was Janot last year.
Mm.
And I think
And
and then it was like,
he's
sorry.
doubtful whether he's available at the moment.
Yeah, and whether he plays now,
Somehow, yeah.
exactly. So sack the medical team, obviously. So yeah, it's so I think if we can get some more consistency this year, bear in mind the first season was um oh Christ, I can't remember, I suppose 12th place finished first season, and then obviously an 8th place finished second season. Why we can't get back to that after a terrible season last year, but a terrible season with a lot of mitigating circumstances.
Yeah, that fullback situation needs sorting out. I
Yeah,
think that's really alarming. But I also recognize that it's alarming now. It might not be alarming in 6 to 8 weeks' time once these
yeah,
guys are back
exactly,
fit. Because the problem you've got is those two players are both really talented. You don't want to replace them.
exactly.
You want them to play. I get that. So it's a really challenging one for a club like yours because when you've got two fullbacks who I think both will get looked at by the top clubs if they rediscover what they'd shown
Yeah,
previously, it's difficult to have two players of the same quality. Like Henry's gonna play every week if
yeah,
he's fully fit,
absolutely.
right? So it's a challenge to replace that. That's why Region was ideal for you. Yeah, correspondents have got you a kind of like 15th as an average finishing position, but on a table you'd be 16th actually
Okay.
when you look at all of them, which is basically where the bookies have got you at the moment as
Yeah.
well. But I think that's also based on uncertainties, like the fullbacks, like Toney, Thiago's injury. There's uncertainties there at the moment. I just think even without Toney, I think you got enough firepower to be winning games. I'd
Definitely,
never look
yeah.
at you and think, oh, Brentford won't score goals. Even if Toney went, Thiago's injured, even if you didn't buy someone else, I still think there's goals in that team.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah. Just look at last season. Obviously, well, you obviously named some of the attacking returns they got last season, and yeah, I can't see it being any issues. Us scoring goals, us conceding goals, maybe it's more of an issue. One day we'll learn how to defend a set piece, but yeah, it's. I think it'll be a much better season this year. Whether I'm well, you know me, I'm always overly optimistic anyway, but yeah, I think it will be better this season. I think it will be better.
I think you might be right, actually. Tom, thank you very much, mate. Anything you want to plug before we finish?
No, not too much. You can follow me on Twitter as FPL Dummy Tom. And then yeah, I guess classic sign up for Patreon as well. And then
Good
you
stuff.
can you can ramble on for a few more minutes after this.
Yeah, we will do. But good spoiler. Thank you, mate. Right, up next on Correspondent Week, we're going from west to east. What I'd recommend doing, rather than like driving around the M25, don't get on that Elizabeth line from Ealing Broadway. It's too much hard work. Take a nice stroll from the G-Tech to Gunnersbury. Get on the overground and stay away from the trouble at Stratford. Get off at Hackney Wick and walk past the river on your way to the London Stadium. Chris Stone and West Ham United is up next for our final podcast on day one of Correspondent Week. Tom, thank you, my friend. Good luck for the new season. Cue music, please, man child.